to arrive at the average form and average size and weight. We then searched the whole island for the statue that best fit that description. And these statues at Ahuakivi, particularly the first one, best defines the average statue.
The average statue they found here is 4 meters tall and weighs 13.5 metric tons.
Our goal here at Ahuakivi with this average statue was to try to understand two things. One, a possible transport method for moving this size statue. And secondly, to get some insight into the Rapa Nui chiefdom that was able to accomplish this task. In other words, we wanted to know how many people were involved, how much food they ate, and how much land they would have needed to control to produce that food. So we were looking at both politics and resources as well as transport technology.
Back at the University of California at Los Angeles, Van Tilburg used her field data to recreate the average statue inside the computer. First, she converted the measurements of the statue into a scale model. With the help of the computer image and scale models, she tested different ways of transporting the stones. The simplest turned out to be this one. The statue lies face up on 2 wooden beams and hauled on rollers. But just how much effort would it have taken to transport the statue like this from the quarry to the Ahuakivi site over 9 miles of uneven rocky terrain? To find out, Dr. Svi Schiller of the robotics lab at UCLA took the original survey map, then digitized the contours of the island landscape. The idea was to figure out the best route from the quarry to the Ahu where the statue was finally erected.
To compute the energy optimal path, what we did first was to compute or to calculate the energy that it would have taken to move the statue along every grid segment on that grid that we first entered into the computer. The energy then is calculated by the force that is required to push the statue in that segment times the distance along that segment. The force is a function of the weight of the statue, the coefficient of friction that we estimated for that mode of locomotion, and the slope of the terrain at that point. Given this data for every grid along that terrain, we then use standard search techniques to find the optimal path. And I believe from engineering standpoint, this is the optimum, and that's the best way to move the statue from the quarry to the site. Now, if the Rapa Nui people did not choose that path, they should have.
This optimal route would have required 70 laborers to push the statue. Schiller estimates that the job would have taken 4.5 days.
Two things really surprised me when we looked at our computerized study. The first was the relatively small amount of wood it took to accomplish the task of moving this statue from Ranawiraku to Ahuakivi. The other thing that somewhat stunned me was the number of days we were dealing with. At best, they could have moved that statue in 4.5 days. The other model showed us 7 days. That's really a relatively short period of time. At its best, archaeology tells us as much about people as it does about things. And I think the significance of this research is that it tells us about the size of the Rapa Nui chiefdom, the number of people involved, the number of resources they would have needed, the amount of food required to accomplish this megalithic task. I think we're learning as much about the society as we are about the methods the society used to move a sculpture.
But not all the statues were average. There are some monsters, at least 65 feet long at the quarry site. The scale and manpower involved are staggering. Was there a kind of ritual competition at work? One group trying to outdo the other in producing bigger and better statues? And did that competition eventually lead to war and the extinction of Easter Island's culture? Maybe the old legends conceal a clue to what happened. The old myths of Rapa Nui tell how the first humans arrived. They say a great chief, Hotu Matua, landed here, a place called Anakena on the northern coast of the island, and divided the land.